The Second World War did not erupt suddenly. It grew slowly, like a storm gathering strength over decades. To understand why the world plunged into such a devastating conflict, we must go back to the final days of the First World War. In November 1918, Germany was exhausted, starving, and collapsing. Although defeated on the battlefield, many German soldiers and commanders refused to accept responsibility. Instead, they spread the dangerous myth that Germany had not truly been beaten, but rather stabbed in the back by weak politicians at home. This belief would later fuel profound resentment. The Treaty of Versailles only deepened this anger. Germany lost territory, its army was restricted, and crushing reparations were imposed. Entire regions in Eastern Europe were reshaped into new countries, sometimes leaving German-speaking minorities outside German borders. What was meant to be a peace settlement instead became a time bomb. Meanwhile, the newly formed League of Nations, created to preserve peace through diplomacy rather than war, was weakened from the beginning when the United States chose not to join. Without America's strength, the League lacked real enforcement power. Inside Germany, the democratic Weimar Republic struggled to survive. Political extremists battled in the streets, and in 1923 the country sank into hyperinflation so severe that people's life savings became worthless within days. Amid this chaos, angry voices rose, including a former soldier from Austria named Adolf Hitler. His fiery speeches blamed Germany's problems on Jews, communists, and the humiliation of Versailles. A failed coup sent him to prison, where he wrote Mein Kampf and laid out his vision for a future Germany built on expansion and racial ideology. When the Great Depression struck in 1929, millions of Germans fell into poverty, and extremist promises suddenly sounded appealing. Hitler's Nazi party surged in popularity, and in 1933, he was appointed chancellor. Within months, all opposition was crushed, political parties were banned, and Hitler emerged as the absolute leader of Germany. While projecting an image of national revival, Hitler secretly rebuilt Germany's military in direct violation of the Versailles Treaty. A new air force appeared, the army expanded rapidly, and factories geared up for war. Yet Britain and France, still traumatized by the horrors of World War I, feared another conflict and chose not to confront him. Their silence only encouraged further aggression. When Hitler reoccupied the Rhineland in 1936 and later annexed Austria, Europe still did nothing. Far from Europe, Japan was also on an expansionist path. Its rapidly growing population and lack of natural resources pushed its leaders to Manchuria, a region rich in minerals and farmland. In 1931, Japanese forces seized Manchuria and established a puppet state. The League of Nations condemned the act, but Japan simply withdrew from the League. The world did nothing. Emboldened, Japan invaded China in 1937, committing brutal atrocities such as the massacre of Nanjing. The United States and European powers protested, but refused intervention, distracted by economic crises and fears of global war. Italy, under Benito Mussolini, followed a similar path. Dreaming of restoring the glory of the Roman Empire, he invaded Ethiopia in 1935. Once again, the League of Nations was powerless. Sanctions were weak, and Britain and France hesitated to confront Italy. These repeated failures convinced aggressive leaders everywhere that the democracies lacked the will to resist. The Spanish Civil War began in 1936 and became a grim rehearsal for the conflict to come. Hitler and Mussolini sent troops, tanks, and aircraft to support General Franco, while Stalin sent aid to the Republican side. Germany's Air Force used Spain as a testing ground for new tactics and weapons, bombing civilian populations in places like Guernica. The unwillingness of Britain and France to decisively support the Republic further signaled their hesitation to oppose fascism. Hitler carefully watched these events and concluded that he could expand without serious resistance. His next targets were close to home. Austria was annexed effortlessly in 1938. Soon after, he demanded control of the Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a German-speaking minority. Instead of standing firm, Britain's Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain chose appeasement, believing that giving Hitler what he wanted would preserve peace. Hitler promised he had no further territorial ambitions, a promise he broke within months when he occupied the rest of Czechoslovakia. By 1939, Hitler's eyes were set on Poland. But there was a problem. Attacking Poland risked war with the Soviet Union. In a shocking twist, Germany and the Soviet Union signed a non-aggression pact. Secretly, they agreed to divide Poland and allow the Soviet Union to claim the Baltic states. Freed from the danger of a two-front war, Hitler moved quickly. On September 1st, 1939, German forces stormed into Poland. Britain and France, having guaranteed Poland's safety, declared war on Germany 2 days later. The world had entered a conflict far more destructive than anyone could have imagined. The Second World War began not because of a single event, but because of decades of political miscalculations, economic turmoil, unchecked aggression, and the repeated failure of nations to stand against rising dictatorships. It was a lesson in how fear, passivity, and division can open the door to catastrophe. And it reminds us that peace is never permanent unless nations are willing to defend it.
If this story moved you, hit the like button and subscribe to Traces of Valor. Your support keeps these forgotten heroes alive. And tell us, what did this story make you feel? Drop your thoughts in the comments below.